I got scammed on eBay. I bought a 60 amp controller and I was sent a 30 amp controller. But this is the trick they used. This is a true 60 amp. This is a 30 amp. They used the 60 amp shell and the 30 amp was inside. Wires sticking out. You would never tell that this, what they sent me, is a 30 amp controller. I put it in the bike and I knew from the beginning it wasn't right. I thought it was maybe broken, regular eBay garbage. You know, when you buy a controller on eBay, you hope you get 6 months, a year out of the controller before it breaks. I figured they just sent me a broken controller. I opened the controller up, pulled it out, and I said, what's this? Box this big, and the circuit board inside was a quarter of the box. I opened up my 38 amp, and my 38 amp was bigger than the controller that was inside of here. I got scammed. And it was a professional scammer. This guy, Chinese guy, I assume he's Chinese. They have the Chinese address. They barely spoke English. They sell a bunch of electronics on their eBay store. And it seems like everything that I looked at, it's everything that you can easily counterfeit in China and sell in the US. Everything. So the way I knew it wasn't a real 60 amp controller, the bike drove like a 30 amp controller. And when I opened it, inside the electronics, there were this. I have many controllers. This one is a 38 amp controller. You can use this anywhere from 36 volts up to 72 volts on this little one. It's a beast. It's a Kursky beast. This one is an original 60 amp. This is original 80 amp. You can see 60 and 80, they're almost the same size. The 80, just a hair bigger. From the 80, this one is 100 amp. Again, just a little bit bigger. The 100 is a hair bigger than the 80. This one here, this comes in 100, 150, and 200. I see people selling this as a 250, 350, 450, 500. It's not possible. This right here goes up to 200 amps. Anything that you see on eBay, Amazon that's over 200 amps, and it's this type of shell, it's not possible. It's possible to run a 200 on a boost, 5 to 10 second boost to get from 200 amp controller, 250, 300, 350 even. But if you're pushing 350, you're only pushing that for maybe 3 to 5 seconds. But real controllers, this is the biggest one you can get, 200. Now you can get true 250, 300, 500, but they're not going to be like this. Inside, it's 24 MOSFETs for 200 amps. It's 100, 150, and 200. All three come in the same size. The 60, 80, and 100 in this size, they have 18 MOSFETs. This is a high quality Kursky 38 amp controller. It has 12 MOSFETs. See how small the circuit board is compared to a 60 amp 18 MOSFET controller. This controller is 2.5 times bigger than the 38 amp. Once you go above 35, 38 amps, you need way bigger surfaces to dissipate the heat and a bigger circuit board to move all the energy around. That's why it's a big difference in price and size between a 3530 controller to a 60 amp controller. The MOSFETs are hooked up to a very thick copper base, and the copper base is hooked up to an aluminum base. And the aluminum base is hooked up to the aluminum body. The big square black thing on the controller, that's the CPU, the brains of the controller. Not many people knew that controllers have CPUs just like a computer. Well, the controller is a computer. It's a computer that controls the speed of the bike, the memory of the bike, controls everything on the bike. It's a controller. It's a very high power computer. This one has 12 MOSFETs. These MOSFETs are very small, that's why it's 12. You go up to this one, it's 18, but the MOSFETs are very big, so it can dissipate the heat very fast. The main difference between all these controllers is how fast the MOSFET can dissipate the heat. So I got scammed. After getting scammed, it took me almost a month to get a full refund. This was a professional scammer. Now, first on eBay, when you file for a return and you check that it was inaccurate website description or inaccurate photo, eBay robot approves your return. You get a return label and you ship it out the same day. It changed now for eBay. Now, the seller has to approve the return. And the seller has 7, 8, or 10 days, whatever. So I was messaging the seller, and they waited to 1 day before their timetable was over. So eBay can't step in. So they approved my return 7 or 8 days later, and they approved a return that I have to pay for return shipping. It's up to them if I pay or they pay. So they accepted the return, I have to pay for return shipping, and they gave me a return shipping address to China. Which to China, send back something this big, it's maybe $100. Nobody would send it back. I told them that's crazy. I shouldn't pay for return shipping, and I'm definitely not going to send it to China. So I had 2 weeks to send it back. Within that 2 weeks, I couldn't ask eBay to step in. So we wait 2 weeks. Then I asked eBay to step in, and it took eBay 10 days to figure everything out. And after 10 days, I needed to ship this back, pay out of my pocket to ship it back to California somewhere. Then, after they received it, they refunded me for shipping and for the product. It's crazy. It's crazy what eBay is doing right now to people. It's not only the sellers on eBay, it's eBay too. eBay changed their policy. So I guess the moral is, the point of the story is, you don't want to buy controllers on eBay. And I'm sure you already know that. I'm sure everybody knows that. Don't buy controllers, eBay, Amazon. Buy them from a well-known brand. The problem is the 60 amp, very few people have them. One of the biggest people that have it, best suppliers, is Kursky. I use all their products. I build their products. I test them, do reviews. But they're out of stock. They're out of stock very often. They're a new company, so they're out of stock. So I went somewhere else looking for a controller, and it was a good deal, $98. But I paid $98 for a 30 amp controller. A 30 amp controller should be $30, $40. They're babies. 30 amp controller, which this is a 38 amp. The one they sent me inside was maybe like a 28 amp, 30 amp. So this was 3 months ago. Eventually, I got a true 60 amp controller right here. Works perfect. Very good. I believe it's 62 or 63 amps. It's a Kursky controller. And that's it. That's the end of the story. And buying anything on eBay, it's always very scary. And there's very few well-known brands for controllers, motors, even batteries. Lithium-ion batteries. How many horror stories I heard about that? It's crazy. People thinking they're buying a battery that has a 100 amp BMS. It turns out to be a 50 amp BMS. People ordering stuff from Alibaba. I had a friend, he ordered a 200 amp BMS battery from Alibaba. It was supposed to be LG cells inside. He got it. It worked for about 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months. Something happened. He replaced the BMS, and it was a true BMS. True BMS. The rating was true, but the BMS broke after a couple months. Then a couple months later, the batteries broke, the cells. They started losing range. So we opened up the whole lithium-ion battery, and it turns out they were like generic Chinese cheap cells. And when we ordered true LG or Samsung's, I forgot what he ordered. I think he ordered a Samsung for replacement. The battery was half the weight. We rebuilt the batteries with all new cells. They were the same cells, 1850. And the battery was half the weight. So the fake Chinese lithium-ion battery wasn't even lithium-ion. I believe it was some type of steel, like nickel or something. That's why it was so heavy. Wow! Time to go for a ride. Safety first. This is my son's bike. I'm taking the beast right here. Taking this beast for a ride.